name is Craig Nash, and we'd like to welcome you to another It's a Grand Life. And our guest for part two of the discussion on the Grand Family Coalition of Loveland, Colorado, is the founder and director, Gail Engel, who is here with us again. And she has done really groundbreaking work in the area of grand families out of her community in Loveland, Colorado, and it's just spread across the whole country. And Gail, we're just delighted to have you back. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Well, last time when we were together, we talked about your journey and how, because of your grandson, which motivates all of us, it starts with our grandkids. How do we get involved in this situation called the grand family, and how do we create a home environment and do the best we can to support our grandkids? But out of your and your husband's personal search for how we can make an impact for our grandson, it's led you not only to put together a support group in Loveland, Colorado, and addressing the needs of Colorado citizens, but you've also been involved at the national level with Generations United and even helped move some legislation forward in your community and been part of other things nationally. So let's talk a little bit about some of the specific work that you folks have been involved in. And the first thing that comes to mind is, what is the Family First Prevention Service Act? Is that a Colorado initiative, or is that national?
Well, first I want to explain to you, Craig, that I haven't been the groundbreaking of all of this. I have been a part of many people who have been behind making all of this happen. I've done my small piece and been a voice of the families that have taken on their grandchildren or family caregivers. And so, starting off with what the Family First is, another national organization called Casey Family Programs is an extremely advocate for children, specifically in the child welfare system. So Casey Family Programs works very closely with Generations United, who has been around for a really long time. And they work very closely together along with other national organizations. And Casey Family Programs works on creating legislation to support grand families. So over several years, they worked on this, and they eventually came up with this Family First Prevention Service Act. It was an act that was implemented in 2018. I believe it was February of 2018. The goal of that was to create change within the child welfare system and making sure that families were considered first, making sure that parents were given the resources they need so they don't have to leave their children behind, and making sure that kin were at the forefront of being able to take on those children rather than put them in foster system. Understanding we need to really concentrate on family first, and hence the name of it. It is a national legislation that was passed. And along with that, Generations United and also works on legislation, and they worked at putting together some legislation called Supporting Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. Those two pieces of legislation were the two pieces of legislation that led to some real big change in the United States for kinship care. And so the Supporting Grandparents Raising Grandchildren was assigned to the Administration of Community Living, which did a question to the nation about what are the needs of grandparents raising grandchildren. When they did that, they got over 500 and some responses. Because I work with Generations United, me and 4 other grandparents raising grandchildren came to the table at Administration of Community Living and put together a report to Congress about the needs of grand families. At the same time, there was another piece of legislation that was worked on for adult caregivers in our nation. So we came together as the two councils and realized that there was much more need for collaboration between the two councils. So together we wrote a report to Congress about the needs of caregivers and the support of grandparents raising grandchildren.
Wow.
So the two pieces of legislation together, the supporting grandparents raising grandchildren, the National Caregivers Report, and the Family First Prevention Service Act, really led to all of the change that we have seen in the last 5 years.
Wow. And has that trickled down to the individual families? I mean, if across the country, or
somewhat,
possibly, is it still in the period of rollout now, or something like that? Is it?
Well, so the Family First is huge. It is a huge bill. There is so much involved with it, and so each state in the nation is to create some change within their child welfare system, including the support of parents and their children, and support of making sure children are placed with Family First. So I sat on the Family First Prevention Service Act implementation team for 3 years, just getting it. How do we do this? What do we do with it? It is so huge. And then the Family First was launched here in Colorado, and it's been launched in other states in the nation. It is a national mandate. It isn't something that's just,
wow.
No, that this has to happen with across the state. And so now that we're 5 years into it, and now there are other councils, and it is changing so much. It's changing how children are involved in child welfare, residential treatment for children, actually changing the way. So in Colorado, we have rules about what governs the child welfare system. So all the rules that go along with governing the child welfare system all have to be changed now.
Wow.
So everything is changing. So like I say, it's not just me. I just happen to be one of the little voices that has spoke loud enough to say, excuse me, you need to think about this.
Well, it comes with recognizing we've got a problem, and kids are falling through the cracks. And I just love the Family First Prevention Act. I think that makes so much sense. Who wouldn't want to check with the family first?
Yep.
And it seems so basic, but until it was enacted, I'm sure it was kind of an uphill journey, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was. And so, and it's just spurred even more. Just here in Colorado, we have 5 new pieces of legislation for Colorado that involve kinship family. In Colorado, grandparents and other relatives can't be licensed like a foster parent can be. They don't get the financial support through child welfare if a child is placed with them. And so Family First has now created something that says, hey, stop a minute. You need to be thinking about these. And so now it's created a kinship navigator program within the state of Colorado. And of course, my voice is there saying, hey, think about this. But it's not about what I do. I'm just a voice at the table. But so now there's a kinship navigator program that's been created in the state of Colorado. And it's for those children who enter the child welfare system. Kin are now getting the support that they need. And now federal legislation is coming along with a piece of legislation currently that is hoping to make sure that states are required to license a kinship care provider, just like they do a foster parent, so that we can get children with family who's capable of having those resources and making sure that children grow up in a home of their origin. So legislation just continues to happen all the time because of the Family First.
And Gail, does that help the grand families get the type of support they need to raise the grandchildren? I mean, is that eventually the idea that, there are significant costs at bringing a child one
There
family
is.
into the family, and it costs a whole lot more now than it did when I was raising my kids. But the bottom line, it does help them not only get the credentials they need, but also get some of the financial resources to create a home and a life for the grandkids, correct?
Well, I would like to say it was that beautiful. But it really is about getting children stable. So we can't be on the welfare system for the rest of the kids' life, but at least it gets them established. If those children are temporarily within a home, say the parent is in prison, that being a licensed kinship care provider would help that family get the resources they need as long as they're going to have the children while the parent's in jail. Once the parent's out, the family first is supposed to help them get the resources they need so they can take their children back. It is not going to be a long haul, long journey support for these families, but it will definitely help them get stable.
So a nice stopgap coverage then to help them in the middle of this process.
We hope.
Yeah,
and it's going to depend on how states respond to it.
Right. It's, you said something earlier that really made so much sense to me, and that is you want to do all you can to make sure that the child does not feel abandoned. And
Yep.
when the parents is incarcerated or maybe getting behavioral health treatment or what have you, kids deal with that abandonment issue, and that can have lifetime effects, can it?
Absolutely.
And how have you guys addressed that at all, or what have you proposed for the through Generations United or through the Grand Family Coalition? How do we deal with this whole abandonment issue and also come alongside the grand families, the grandparents that are trying to make this work?
That's really a good question, because Generations United, because of the Supporting Grandparents Raising Grandchildren Act, when we got that report to Congress about all the needs that there are and how can our government entities or our nonprofit organizations, our community support, that's where that support needs to come from. It shouldn't come from dollars that we pay as tax dollars. It needs to come within our community to support these families. So through the Supporting Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, they granted funds to Generations United to create the National Technical Assistance. It is called the Grand Family and Kinship Network National Technical Assistance Center. So that Technical Assistance Center is really taking organizations across the nation to saying, you've got an evidence-based program, let's duplicate it in other states. And Generations United, will then support them and give them the technical assistance they need in order for other community partners to do that work. So Generations United created that report, the State of Grand Families in the State Facts Report that you mentioned last time. It brings those resources to our community, and it makes our community aware of what the needs are. And then how can we create those resources? Because nationally, the federal government can't take care of us. It trickles down to the state. The state can't take care of all of us. It's got to come down to our communities.
Right.
So we got to educate our communities that we are in need of these things. And once we do that, then community partners can find the resources they need to create that. It's all about bringing awareness.
And you've been right in the middle of that these past 16 years in Colorado. You were just groundbreaking in some of the work that you did. What about folks in Michigan or in we've got folks listening in Florida and other places? How would you suggest we go about building the type of coalition that you folks have to generate this type of change?
You really have to understand the work that's been done so far. First of all, you have to understand what Family First was, what the supporting grandparents raising grandchildren was. You need to be in touch with Generations United. They are the ones doing the groundbreaking work. And I just happen to sit on the council to say, hey, these are the things that are needed, along with I think there's 48 grandparents in the United States that sit on Generations United Council, working within their own states to bring our voices. And what you need to do is be aware of what those legislation pieces are and work with your community. Go to the Office on Aging and express to them, here's a report that was written by Generations United to say this is what the needs are, and listen to this report and help us get those needs. Talk to your legislators, show them that report. Here's a report that was written and it identifies all the needs. Read it, understand it, talk to your legislators. Support each other. As I said in the last one, start a support group, but it's got to be wider than that. You've got to really reach out to your congressman and address our needs are not being met.
Well, I know one thing. This report that Generations United had put together on the state of Michigan, which you referred me to, by the way, is phenomenal. And it has, first of all, gives you all the statistics in our state of Michigan that there are 185,000 children living in homes where a relative is the head of the household. That whole kinship idea, and this you probably have this for 50 states, right?
Oh yes, Generation has that report for every state in the nation.
Every grandparent needs to get this report, so you know you're not alone. And in the state of Michigan, there are almost 55,000 grandparents responsible for their grandkids, 55,000. And if you were to tell that to me, Gail, 4 months ago, I would say that is just a crazy term, that there's 55,000, but there's 55,000 grand families out here in the state of Michigan and nationally. That's got to be, you know, in the millions. But we need to, yes, find out what's going on locally and what's going on in our state. If you're in Ohio listening to this, you need to reach out to the folks that are involved in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Indiana or wherever you're listening, and get to know what's already being done in your state, in your community. Yep. And before I met you, Gail, I was so naive as far as what was going on, and just absolutely thrilled that folks have really put together the type of coalition to help grandparents who have health issues. All the grandparents I know went through COVID. There's behavioral health issues, let alone, you know, the challenges of raising the grandkids. And that's why we at It's a Grand Life, we want to be a resource to get you connected to what's going on. And by the grace of God, we've been enlightened as far as what the amazing work that's been done by you, Gail, and your group in Colorado, and now all over the country. And so for us to support our grand families in our area, we first of all need to find out what's going on.
You'd be surprised. There is more going on than we think. Here in Colorado, there is another organization very similar to mine that's been around for 20 some years. Catholic Charities is running that organization. It's a grandparent group. In Nevada, there's a young lady there that started a kinship navigator program that is doing amazing work with kinship families. Florida has an amazing network of people. Just going on to Generations United, I think it's www.grandfamilies.org is where you're going to find those state fact sheets. On those state fact sheets at the bottom also will have other resources within your community. Reach out to those people, because there are organizations like Grand Family Coalition across the nation. You just have to find them.
And That is, I'm living proof that once you get the website, if you can just Google that, you will be blown away
Yep,
as far as what's going on in your own backyard.
that's right.
And Gail, I don't know what we would do without you here at It's a Grand Life, because you've certainly taken the lid off for us, and as you've done in Colorado, and we just appreciate your level of commitment and your 16 years of service to grand families, and I just hope you will come on again and keep us updated on
Absolutely.
anything that's going on. And you've been a blessing to every grandparent that listens to It's a Grand Life, and want to thank you all for so much for joining us today. But is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with before we let you go?
Hold your head high and know that you're a hero to these kids. Whether your journey is short or long, you cannot do this alone. I have said that from the beginning. We can do this, but we don't need to do it alone.
Gail Engel, thank you so much for being our guest again on It's a Grand Life. We look forward to having you back real soon. And thank you for sharing with us 2 podcasts here. Have been such a blessing. And just want to encourage you that the work you're doing is not only changing lives in Colorado, but you're helping us here in Michigan as well. God bless you very much.
Well, Craig, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us for another It's a Grand Life. Remember to never waste your pain. God can use your situation to bless others even halfway around the world. Be sure and subscribe to It's a Grand Life on our Facebook page, as well as YouTube and any of the various podcast channels that feature the Grand Life podcast. When it comes to raising a grand family, remember the words of the Apostle Paul, who said in 1 Corinthians 13, "Love is patient, love is kind, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails." In leading your grand family, it's going to take faith, hope, and a whole lot of love. Please reach out to me. I can be a blessing to you and pray for you, or help you connect to free resources that can make your journey a little easier.